Namaste, yogis. I welcome you to my Seva video project, and I invite you to take a seat. If you have yet to see part 1 of this 4-part video series, I recommend that you watch part 1. Each part will be approximately a half an hour, and we've covered a lot of poses already, but there's plenty more to learn from. So I did this video series on 64 Asanas and Their Stories, which is an incredible book. I read through it twice, and first time I read for leisure, the second time I read and I documented notable parts of each asana. And moving forward, that is what we will be discussing. Some more poses and the stories behind them, or some notable beliefs behind them. And I hope this helps cultivate a better worldview of Indic mythology for you. So we will begin with Beka Asana, or frog pose. And there is a story from the Mahabharata where a frog princess seduced young men and led them to her pond to disappear forever. However, she attempted this on a king named Parikshi one day, and he had his soldiers drain the lake because he got very upset when she disappeared. There the king found the princess's father, who was a bullfrog, and he commanded his soldiers to kill it. But the princess transformed back into a person and begged forgiveness and promised to marry the king. In the Ramayana, Ravana, a king, asked Seva, which owed him favor, to marry Shakti, and Shakti was Shiva's wife. And however Shiva did not approve of this, he agreed to it. And what he did was, in turn, he turned a female frog into the likeness of Shakti, and Ravana fell for the trick, but not without puzzlement or confusion from his impersonated bride, because that time she acted a bit frog-like. Buddha was known to be born a frog in his previous life as well, so that's a notable fact for Buddhism. And we will mention Buddhism, Jainism, and Hinduism, and all these. We even mentioned some stuff from Sikhism a bit. So it's fairly interesting learning about all these myths behind these ancient and current belief systems. Dharnua Asana, or bow pose, will be the next pose we discuss. And Shiva's bow is called Pinaka, and Vishnu also carries a bow, which is called Saranga. In the Ramayana, it is said that Ram is an archer who never misses a target. In the Mahabharata, Arjuna is an ace archer, and these are both stories of ancient stories which go back thousands of years and help create a basis of Hinduism, if you did miss part 1 video. The bow of Kanadeva, the god of lust, love, and desire, is made of sugarcane, while the bowstring is made of bees and butterflies, and the arrows are tipped with flowers. So if you can imagine that, a sugarcane bow, and it has bow bead string, and the arrows are tipped with flowers. It's quite an interesting, imaginative bow there. In Buddhism, Jainism, and Hinduism, the purpose of life is to outgrow desire. The Kamideva is known as the demon of desire, as she can strike anyone with her bow. And this bow obviously causes desire within whoever it strikes. In one story, Shiva opens the third eye and sets Kamideva on fire. Later realizing the danger of life without desire, the love god, however, is resurrected as Kamakshi or Karini, and she still wields her bow to this day to remind us that all desire matters for nature to thrive. Because without desire, no one would really get anything done. You got to have passion and purpose and desire in order to achieve. And even so, want and, eat or drink. In yoga, the body can be seen as a bow, the breath, the bowstring. The arrows can be seen as awareness of the truth of life. In another story, Shiva pins Brahma to the sky with a bow when he is overcome by lust. And we'll get a little further into that story later on. And it's pretty interesting. As before, we will take about 15 seconds to pause in between each pose or asana story. And if you have any questions, please feel free to comment and I will get back to you with as much knowledge I have capable of me at the current time, and I will answer your questions. So don't feel a need to not ask if you do have a question. Pasha asana, or the noose pose. This is an interesting one to me. In Hinduism, desire is representative of the bow, the way destiny is represented by the noose. Desire and destiny are the greatest driving forces of nature in Hindu mythology. So, to have a desire and to have a destiny in Hindu mythology is what basically creates and shapes your life and the plan laid out before you. The noose is said to bind us to our destiny, and that the noose itself is created by our desires. And this is karma and work and action and our reaction to the events in our life. So for every action in our life, we have a reaction to it, and that is karma. Yama, the god of death, holds a noose that maintains all our life's debts before rebirth and to be repaid in our future lives. And moksha is the freedom of hunger, fear, and attachment, and the circle of life, death, and rebirth. So if we can escape this circle of life, death, and rebirth, when one's noose is loosened and our debts are repaid, then we gain moksha. The goddess is said to carry the bow and the noose, respectively. As Kamini, she is day; as Yamini, she is night, carrying both the desire and destiny, which is intertwined. And karma in Hindu says we alone are responsible for our lives and we cannot blame anyone. Bringing up to mind that it is our responsibility to create our own fate with our own desires. And we will take a moment to pause, reflect, or ask questions. Sana, and this is the primal sound pose. Is known as the primal sound of the universe. It is said to have created the vibrations which brought the universe into being. It marks the birth of consciousness and time that includes both past and present and future. The birth of space, matter, and the three states of being, which are inertia, agitation, and lucidity. The chanting of is followed by Buddhist, Hinduist, Jainist, and Sikhist. So it's pretty worldwide known to and chant away. One could say Ganesha embodies the sound All right. Hamza Asana, or swan pose. Hamza represents exhalation and inhalation through each syllable, ham and sa. So ham, sa, and you breathe in. In Hindu mythology and yoga, Hamza is closely associated with breathing techniques for that very reason. In folklore, the swan can discern milk from water. As such, it is a symbol of intellectual discernment and the ability to discriminate fact and fiction or truth and falsehood. Hamza is also considered a symbol of detachment in Hindu mythology, as the swan's feathers don't get wet even when sitting in water. So it is a metaphor for water detaching from the swan or swan detaching from the water, even though they are connected. Brahma, the god of creation, and Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge, are also known to mount or ride the swan. In the Hindu Puranas, Brahma takes form of a swan to find the tip of the pillar of fire that extends into infinity, and this angers Shiva, who curses Brahma to never be worshipped in temples. And that is why, to this day, Brahma is not really worshipped in any temples, even though he is the creation god in Hinduism. There's a Buddhist story of a swan who is murdered by a hunter in front of Buddha. And Buddha, being Buddha, asks the hunter if he can bring the swan back to life. And the hunter says he cannot. So Buddha, once again being Buddha, asks the hunter what gives him the right to take away the Hamsa's life then. Which begs the question, what gives us the right to do many of the things that we do? Marachi Asana, or Marachi's pose, is the next pose we will discuss. Now, Brahma is said to be the great grandfather of all living creatures. And when Brahma emerged from the lotus, from Vishnu's navel, he was alone, hungry, and fearful. So he molded 7 sons, seers, or rishis, they could be called, from his thoughts. And the 7 sons, observing the world, transmitted their thoughts to Brahma, giving him knowledge in what is known as the Vedas. So the Vedas are the 7 rishis' thoughts transmitted back to Brahma. And Marachi was one of the rishis and father to Kashyapa, who was father to the birds, reptiles, fishes, and some animals. So Brahma is once again interpreted as the father or the grandfather of birds, reptiles, fishes, and some animals. In the Bhagavad Gita, Marachi is a metaphor of the wind god and identified by Krishna. Excuse me, I did not read my handwriting right. He is considered the wind god identified by Krishna. So not exactly a metaphor, but the actual real deal. In Buddhist mythology, Marachi is associated with dawn, light, and the sun, and also he rides or mounts a boar. Take a moment to pause, reflect. All right. And I hope you're doing well and enjoying these stories and the background behind the poses. I know it's a lot to take in, and You may or may not have read the book, so you can feel free to pause and reflect and ask away any questions you need to, or you can always pick up a copy of the book, which I'll show in video 3. And yeah, it's a great read. So let us continue with Vashishtha Asana. And one story goes, when Vedic gods Varuna and Mitra saw Urvashi, a beautiful damsel, they spurted semen into a pot, which grew into Agastya and Vashishtha. Celibate sages who practice certain yogi poses are said to have such potent semen, it gives them the magical powers as well as wisdom. And this delves into mysticism. In the constellations are 7 sages and their wives. However, one story goes the fire god Agni seduced 6 of the wives, and they became Kritika's constellation. The 7th is the star Alcor in the Saptarshi constellation, and she sits beside the sages because she was the one that did not get seduced by Agni. Vashishtha teaches Ram in the Ramayana and in the Vedic scripture he is the guardian of the kings. Vasishtha also wrote a book known as Yogi Vasishtha, which explains how one can live the life of a householder yet maintain the thoughts of a hermit. And we will get in more to the idea of being a householder and a hermit, or being one separate from the other, as we delve into more of these stories. It is an important yogic philosophy there, either maintaining being both, or the transition from one to another, or both. Durvasa Asana is the next pose we will discuss. And Durvasa Asana in the Hindu scriptures stands out because he had a reputation of having a short temper, especially for a rishi. And the rishis were known to not really have a lot of anger. In several stories, he curses people for not paying him enough attention. Now, it's important to keep in mind that the rishis were not perfect as well. Indra was said to not acknowledge Durvasa's presence, so he cursed his fortune to be dissolved in the ocean of milk. Shakuntala, distracted by thinking her lover was cursed by Durvasa, so that her lover would forget her. Dushyanta forgets her in the ring he gave her, but when he finds the ring and remembers her, it is too late, and she was gone. Rishis were known to be extremely knowledgeable men, but not all possessed empathy, kindness, or compassion, reminding us not to mistake knowledge with wisdom. In the Ramayana, Durvasa threatens Ram in an attempt to get an audience with him, which he does, despite the king trying to seek solitude. We will now pause for a moment to question. We got about 10 minutes left in this video. Should be enough time for 9 or 10 more stories. And I'd like to thank you for joining me. Again, reminder, if you have not watched video 1, it may help make video 2, which is this video, make a bit more sense, as all the knowledge kind of combines together, and especially the further we go on, the more you hear, the more you acknowledge and know of these myths, then the more they'll make sense when they combine. Rishika Asana, rishis often married princesses In one instance, Shavana was meditating for such a great amount of time, a termite hill formed around him. When Shirkanya passed the hill, she accidentally poked out his eyes and blinded him. So she would care for him. She married Shavana, and pleased with her devotion, the gods gifted Shavana with a youthful being and the secret of Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is said to keep one young and youthful throughout their life. The sage Ruchiki, who was Shavana's great-grandson, also sought a wife by the name of Satyavata. In exchange, Ruchiki performed a ritual to create a magic potion for Satyavata's father. The potion would give Gadi and his wife a warrior son in exchange for his daughter's hand. However, Ruchiki brewed another potion for his wife, and the daughter and mother switched potions. This led to one child being born a sage and becoming a warrior, and one child being a warrior, born to be a warrior, perhaps becoming a sage. And that's a really interesting story if you want to get more into it. Vishwamitra Asana. Sorry about that. We keep getting interrupted. I got to show them off. I got 9 minutes left of this video. Yeah. I got 9 minutes left of this video, and then I'll be up. Kids. Can't live with them. Can't live without them. Just kidding. I love them. I love them so much. But boy, they can be busybodies. So we're bound to get interrupted again. Vishwamitra Asana. Now, one story goes, once a king named Kashika, Vishwamitra wished to become a rishi as they possessed a power of mysticism no kingdom or military could ever give him. During his yogic practices, the gods sent nymphs to Vishwamitra to distract him from his goal. One, the very first of which was sent, succeeded. To his dismay, I'm sure, because this angered Vishwamitra, who after that day ignored every nymph and eventually developed the power of control of a rishi. Vishwamitra was known to attempt to kill the children of Vashishta, who never sought retribution for his actions. This gave birth to Vishwamitra's idea that a true yogi is not just powerful but wise. Vishwamitra put King Harishchandra through a trial of tests. The king had to give up his power and empire and become a common slave. As a slave, his son died, and his wife was also made to be a slave. And when the king finally passed the test, he became King Indra, king of paradise. And King Indra is pretty darn important in a lot of these myths as we get further on. So I look forward to telling you about him. All right. Galava's pose. Kashika gave up his kingdom to be a hermit. His wife, after years of waiting, went to sell one of their children so they could survive. His son's name was Galava, and she tied a rope around his neck, taking him to the market. Prince Satyavrata saw them and offered to keep them fed until Kashiki returned. Now, when Kashiki returned as Vishwamitra, the great yogi, he offered the prince a boon. Using his yogic powers, he allowed Satyakurat to enter Indra's paradise or heaven. And well, this happened to upset Indra because he tried to push Satyavrata back down to earth. And this made him known as Krishanku, one who's neither on earth or in heaven. Now, the reason why Indra tried to push him back down to earth, is because originally he promised that Pushatyavrata would never go to heaven. Now Galaba was tasked to bring his father 1,000 white horses with one black ear each, and this led to him collecting 800 and a son to take over the kingdom. And the son came from the daughter of King Yayati, and her name was Madhavi, and she later becomes a hermit in the woods. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. We'll wrap this up with another 2, possibly 3 stories. And then we'll be done with we'll be done with part 2 of this video. Astavakra Asana, the Paschanids, was the gathering of sages to discern the meaning, importance, and conclusion of the true nature of what the Vedas are. The Vedas were transmitted orally and were a set of scriptures people sang during a ritual known as yagna. Before the gathering of sages, one sage called Kahoto was discussing the Vedas with his wife when his unborn child corrected him 8 times. Upon the 8th time that he was corrected by his unborn child, he cursed him. Astavakra was the child's name, and he grew up to be intelligent. In one instance, Astavakra saved his father, Kahota, whom loses a debate at King Janaka's court. With Kahota condemned to die, Astavakra debates with King Janaka about the Vedas and the Puranas, restoring his father's honor and granting him life again. And Astavakra and the Ramayana lived on the edge of the village, or in a forest on the edge of a village. Kandina Asana. In Hindu mythology, Kandina was a sage who accompanied Agastya, taking Vedic culture south with him. So he's the one who took the Vedic scriptures that were orally translated and traveled them south. In Buddhism, Kandina led previous lives he engaged with Buddha in. When Siddhartha Gautama gave up his kingdom to live a hermit life in the forest, Kandina follows him. In Jainism, the 24th Tirthankara belonged to a clan that said he was a descent from Kaudinya. Excuse me. Misread my writing. So yes, Kaudinya is both in Buddhism, Jainism, and he's originally in Hinduism. The final pose we will discuss for this video, I believe, will be Kashyapa Asana. Now, Brahma's grandson, Kashyapa, had many wives. His wife gave birth to the Devas, the Asuras who live below the earth, the birds, the serpents, and all the hooved animals, also clawed animals and sea creatures. Thus we are all descendants from Brahma. The Devas have all the wealth in the sky, and the Asuras seek and are jealous of it. Snakes eat birds' eggs, and birds eat snakes. Thus we are all fighting for survival, and this is a metaphor. The conflict between Devas and Asuras led to the Surans, days and nights, and the phases of the moon. Kashyapa is considered a tortoise due to turtles' patience. In Buddhism, Kashyapa was a past Buddha. In Jainism, Buddhism, and Hinduism, there's an idea of wisdom being eternal, as it can be passed on. And we will stop there for these stories. And in part 3, we will wrap up the rest of the stories and discuss all of them. We got about, I'd say, 17 pages left of written discussion. So I will see you in the next video.